Alright guys, welcome back to the end of the first week of this little journey of fish learning poker, rec to reg, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, let's jump straight in. So we've got this week graph. So the graph itself not looking too hot. What I would say is there was a few instances this week, or quite a few it seemed, where we was just running a bit unlucky. So I think we lost aces into kings a couple times. Kings over queens I think we lost as well, just stuff like that. So I'm not really too fussed. Like, you can't be too outcome focused on this sort of thing, but I think in myself I felt a lot more confident this week in bluffing in the right spots, and you can kind of see at the halfway point here my red line has stabilized somewhat. So obviously a tiny sample could also just be variance, but in myself I felt as though the decisions were a lot clearer. I'm still definitely not finding all the bluff spots, don't get me wrong, but some of the mandatory bluff spots I think I am finding, and as well the node that sort of goes, check back on the flop and checking on the turn. Before I'd probably just check down with nothing, whereas now I realize that's such a easy spot to bluff, and I feel like 90% of the time that I'm doing that, just throwing out a little bet on the river seems to be working a lot against the pool at 10-0. So yeah, that's great. Obviously the graph could be better, but that's something else I did. So beforehand, I think it was roughly half of the sample. I was starting with 3 tabling, and I think I actually tried 4 tabling at one point. And I had to be honest with myself and just say, like, I was just clicking buttons. I think 4 tables is too much for me right now. Once I've warmed up, I think 3 tables, especially if one's maybe a bit slow, I think that is okay. But for now, 4 tables is just something I'm not going to bother doing, because I think I'm just not able to focus. And at this stage, when I'm still, quite shit at poker, I should probably be more concerned about making the right decisions on fewer tables, ingraining those sort of patterns in my brain. And then as we move on, maybe we can move back up to 4 tables. But I'm still happy with the volume we can put in at sort of 2 or 3 tables. So it's not the end of the world. So we managed almost 5,000 this week. So I think in the goals from the previous episode we said minimum 20k a month, so this is right on track for that. But yeah, looking at some of the stats, obviously losing this week 2.39 per 100. Not going to give many of these stats too much weighting. Obviously it's 5,000 hands, but as I say, I was happy towards the second half. I don't know if that was coincidental, but the red line does seem to flat a bit. And that was when I was making more of those conscious decisions, watching the action and trying to think, how did we get to this spot? Is it a favorable world for us to make some sort of bluff with those weak check lines, or even with, flush draws is a very obvious one to me now. When they miss in the past, I probably would just give up on the river. Whereas now I'm barreling a third time when appropriate. And yeah, it seems to be working out really well. It's just we got unlucky with a few of these. Like, I don't know. Let's pull this over. Is this just I'm going to pull up maybe 5 or so hands after this from ones that I've tagged to go through. Let me know if that's something you guys are interested in, or if you just prefer I just go over the stats and sort of how I felt that week. But I feel like going over 5 or so hands is worthwhile. So yeah, we get pocket queens on the button. Cut off opens. We're 3-betting that pure, obviously. Fold round, we get a 4-bet, and I'm just going to be shoving in that position. I don't know if I'm supposed to be 5-betting at all, but for me, simplify it down, just get it in, and we get unlucky against aces, happens, move on. And then I think the second biggest loser was run into aces, so just standard stuff. Oh, he had queens and he banked it on the river. which was good stuff. Felt very nice. But let's take a look at our tagged hands. So I've got 10 here, but we'll see. We'll see. It's, don't want this to take too long, but let's open it up. Alright guys, sorry about the little jump cut, but I started going through my hands in HM3 and was just sort of giving my thoughts on them, but I figured it's pretty pointless in me, a beginner, going over that without any sort of analysis from someone else or a coach or anything like that. So I've just uploaded 5 of my tagged hands this week into GTO Wizard and figured it'd be worth going through there. And because it was just a bit rambly before, so we'll just get into this now. So this was one we had King Jack of Hearts in the big blind, so this is going to be a call. Have the option to raise, which I think in the past I would, but they're the same EV, so I'm fine with simplifying and just calling here. Now, we're going to check, because I don't build a donk range currently in any spot, so we'll be checking range there. And before it shows up on the next turn, I want to go over my thoughts at the time, or thoughts now. So if I had this hand right now, I would be saying that's a pretty juicy flop for us, and facing a bet from villain, I would be very highly considering a check raise here. We have good draws to the flush, and we've got king high as well, so I think raising here is much better than calling. We're also out of position, so just trying to play this slow is less effective than if the roles were reversed, where we can dictate how big the pot gets a little easier. If we get into a habit of check calling, then we run into the situation on the turn, for example, where it just goes check check and we lose the street of values. So I think trying to build the pot now is a good idea. So we end up making the call, but let's check out the EV. So again, it's all fairly similar, so maybe I'm overthinking it, but I think for the reasons I said, I probably would prefer a raise. But let me know if you think that is crazy. I suppose it's not the nut flush. Maybe that's why it prefers a call. Maybe with the ace jack suited, although we'd be 3-betting that probably. But let's say ace. Oh god, maybe ace 8 is a fairly comparable spot. Maybe that'd be more preferable for a raise. I don't know. But okay, not a terrible decision. We're going to be checking here again. Same reason. We're not donking. So before I click next, let's just think about this. So we've turned a pretty high value hand now. So going for a check raise now might be less optimal, just because... Oh, would it? I'm not actually sure. Let's stop doing this, because this is what I did before. I started analysing the spot myself. Let's just see what this says. Okay. So it prefers a large raise here. So calling this really small bet. I suppose, yeah, facing a really small bet, I don't really love calling. Feel like we could get way more value, so raising is appropriate here. It does prefer a much bigger raise than the one that I go for, which is surprising, because to me that feels like quite a big check raise, but I'm just not super used to doing it. So maybe in the future I can consider bigger, but at least we're going down the right sort of path. And they reshove into us, and I'm hoping we make the call, which we do. And yeah, it turns out Finland just had the straight. Happens, but lucky we made the right sort of call there. So moving on to the next one. I'll try and go through this a bit quicker. Sorry if I'm rambling. Also, let me know if you guys would prefer me doing this in like a different video, and I can have these weekly ones as literally just to check in on the graph and say things that I've learned. And we could do these videos in like a different format, maybe some shorts, I don't know. Just let me know if you're even interested in this and just hearing about how I think about hands. But yeah, moving on to hand 2, we get queens in the small blind. We will be obviously raising that up. as I've clicked the wrong button. And we get called by the big blind. We flop top set. Very wet flop. But I think we're so high up in our range here that I would want to start building value here. So I think betting here is fine. According to the EV, it's fairly indifferent between this and check. So fine with that. We get called. Again, I don't think I'll be slowing down here. Way too high. So betting again. Let's compare. So it does prefer an overbet here. So that's something to be aware of. Overbetting, if I recall, I need to revisit my notes on this because this isn't clear to me. But when we have a massive range advantage with nut advantage, I believe, is when you want to use these sort of sizings. So I very rarely do this, I'll be honest. I don't know if there's a mental block there for me with just the risk of it or perceived risk, but this is interesting. I do want to kind of go back now and assess where overbets are appropriate. But at least we did bet and we get raised here. And yeah, we make the call. I was just going over my head whether I would ever go over the top here. And I don't think I ever would. But yeah, we make the call. Now we're checking. And I think with the 5, this is something that Pete Clark from Carrot Corner mentions quite a lot. I've been watching his series with... Oh man, I forgot the name. But the first series he did where he's taken someone from losing to winning. Is it stalling to mauling, or is that the second one? One of them. I'll put the link in the description for people that are interested. But one of the videos I watched recently, he's been talking about when you're in these spots, just sit and think, how did we get to this position? Do we think it's an over or under bluffed spot in the pool? And then make your decision based off of that, essentially. So obviously we've got a strong hand, we've got top set, board's pretty horrific, and the fact that we already got raised on the turn facing a double barrel, both decently sized, I don't think that's a particularly overbluff spot. And then on the river where we already lose equity with the extra heart on board, I just think this is an incredibly underbluff spot. So we do make the fold, and thankfully that was the right decision. So from this hand, just seems like we want to be a bit more aggressive with our sizings when we have such a strong hand. But thankfully we make the right fold there. Next hand, under the gun with queens again. Going to raise that up. Get called by the big blind. Flop is fairly dry. Obviously, this sort of range is going to connect better with big blind, but I still think it's way too dry to be too concerned with that. So I'm guessing we'd be going for a large bet here. But I guess GTO Wizard is very aware of the fact that this connects a lot better with them than us. I'm imagining if this was ace 8-6 or ace 6-4 or king 6-4, we'd be doing a lot more betting here, but I guess it's more concerned with that. It doesn't seem like a huge EV difference, so it's not a blunder, I suppose, but maybe I should be giving it more credit, even on these drier rainbow boards. But we do make the bet in this situation, and we get called. King's obviously going to be much better for our range, so I think double barrel in here is fine. Yeah, you can see this is a higher EV decision than check, even though check seems to be the preferred. But yeah, we go ahead and double barrel, and we get called again. So ace going to be pretty, and that's when he donks. I was going to say ace is better for our range, but he donks out onto the river. And I'm not sure about the villain here, but in this spot, I think, again, going back to the previous example, I think this is quite an underbluff spot. I don't think people are going to face double barrels out of position and then donking the river on quite a volatile card. So I do think this is probably underbluffed. So we do end up making the fold. It seems fairly indifferent between the two. So that's good to see. The inaccuracy just coming from the flop where, yeah, 8-6-4 seems dry to me, but apparently it connects too well with big blind range to be betting there. But the EV seemed to be quite similar on a lot of these decisions, so I'm not too stressed. Okay, under the gun with king queen suited. Again, quite a dry flop. Tens maybe better for our range than the previous flop. So again, I'd be treating this similarly to before. So I'd be betting this pretty much every time with this holding. 2 overcards, the backdoor flush and straight draw, I just think is too strong, but we'll see. Okay, again, fairly indifferent, prefers a check, but don't mind the aggression. I think, especially at 10-0, the aggression's probably better against the pool as an exploit, but I'm in no position to be making claims like that. We go for a small bet here, and we get raised. I think our hand is still too good to fold at this point. Be quite nitty to give this up, so we're going to kick it on back. And now facing a barrel from big blind. We're supposed to make the call here, and we have, I guess, our first blunder of folding this. So trying to think what we have. We've still got 2 overcards to the board. Flush draw is dead now, but we still have the ace or the, oh my god, yeah. I bet in this moment I was just thinking about the ace and not realizing it was an open ender. I know that's hella stupid, but that's probably what I was thinking with this. It's not a massive bet. It's what, like 2/3 pot. So yeah, floating this again. I just don't want to be, I get worried in my head now about overcalling and being in pots for too long because my red line just is absolute shite half the time. I get worried about overcalling with then the intent to just fold if I don't hit, because I feel like that's the reason why in the past my red line's taken such a big hit. But apparently too nitty on the turn here. I guess facing a bigger bet maybe folds more appropriate, but yeah, this is first blunder. So I'll try to bear that in mind in the future. I wonder if against this sizing it's always just a call with an open ender with 2 overcards to the board, especially when it's this dry. So yeah, something to bear in mind for sure. And then last hand we're going to do today, because I don't want this going on too long. Ace queen in the big blind. We're going to raise it on up. And in, did I say in the button? In the big blind. And I think in these spots I'm jamming in a blind versus blind, which GTO Wizard does not love, but it's only a 0.20 EV difference. Maybe I had a read on this player, I'm not too sure at the moment. And we end up taking it down against 10s. I really did think that blind versus blind this would have been a shove. Maybe I'm wrong there. Let's quickly go to the analysis before I wrap this up. So, yeah, it's just a straight call. There's actually no, this doesn't look like the right action to me. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's have a look. So, even calling with aces, which is something I absolutely don't do. And maybe I should, but maybe I just need to keep it simple for now. But I never call with aces pre. Like, if I can get it in with aces, I'm gonna. But yeah, ace queen suited apparently a call here. Interesting. But works out this time, but something to be aware of. Did it show the EV difference? Yeah, so it's not, like I say, it's not a huge difference, 0.2 EV. Maybe I did have a read on that player, so it'd make it a lot more obvious, because there have been some absolute whoppers recently that have been just launching it in with everything under the sun. So maybe this is one of those situations. But yeah, those are 5 hands from the week. And like I said, I want to wrap it up by just talking about how the week's been outside of the table. So I'm still going through grade 1 of Pete Clark's Carrot Poker School. Pull up the overall graph while I'm talking about this. I think this week I would like to dedicate a bit more time to that. I've been a bit more focused on putting in volume this week, so maybe need to ease up a bit on that. Because I'd say I've done about half of the lectures up to grade 5, and I've made notes on all of those, so quite happy with where I'm at with those, but need to keep pushing and not get complacent, because even when I finish grade 1, there's still going to be so much to learn. Grade 2, 3, and the grade E, and even that's probably just scratching the surface, so putting the education at the front is going to be important. So maybe this week I'll set myself the goal of getting through, let's say by next week I want to have finished another 2 lectures with notes, that's watching them multiple times like I have with the other ones, and trying to keep up this volume of around 5k a week, so we can hit that 20,000 by the end of the month. And yeah, this is where I'm at this week. So sorry if it felt a bit rambly. I didn't really know how to structure this. I didn't know if people would prefer just a quick summary of the graph and the hands, how the week went overall, and just keeping it short and sweet like that, or if you'd prefer me to go into some hands maybe next time with a bit more structure, so it's not me just absolutely yapping. But yeah, let me know. Would love to hear feedback. Really appreciate people clicking on the last video, and yeah, I hope the tables have been good for you guys and you found this somewhat interesting. But for now, I will head off and I'll see you guys in a week. But if I see comments saying that you'd like some hand analysis shorts from me, or just self-review, analysis probably the wrong word to use for a dumbass like me, but yeah, let me know what you fancy seeing, and I will see you guys next week.